How many of you have heard of a woman called Ala Murabit? I bet nobody. Well, she's a Libyan too. She's a Muslim woman, but she's also the pioneer of women's rights in Libya, and she's the founder of the Voice of Libyan Women. It's a women's empowerment and development organization. And she and many women who have joined her are Libyans too. Who has heard of Salwa Bougaïgis, another Libyan woman? Well, she's a Libyan human rights lawyer. And she shines a positive light on Libya's current struggles. And she tells the world to appreciate, no, celebrate the many non-violent protests and demonstrations that are taking place in Libya. And she says these are positive signs of citizens, women and men, struggling for freedom, for representation, and yes, even for peace. So has anyone heard of Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf? We're getting a bit closer to home here. Well, who remembers that he tried to establish a community center with a mosque in Lower Manhattan in New York? He was widely attacked as a militant Islamist for trying to build a ground zero mosque. And yet his project was intended to help heal the wounds of 9/11, promote interfaith understanding, and work against violent extremism. But extremists of another kind used it to fan the flames of Islamophobia instead. Imam Faisal Abdul Rauf is an American Muslim, an imam who has been working on interfaith dialogue in the US for more than a quarter of a century, with a particular focus on fighting extremism and healing US-Muslim relations since 9/11. And contrary to the concept of clash of civilizations which dominates our discourse, Abdul Rauf's coherent and compelling message is that the real battle lies between religious extremists and moderates on all sides. Moderation is Abdul Rauf's motto, representing a way of being that encapsulates the principle of nonviolence, and as a result he is helping to build a global movement of the moderates across all faith traditions. This hardly causes a ripple in the news media, but the Prime Minister of Malaysia launched this idea at the General Assembly of the United Nations in October 2010. So the people who I've talked about and the communities that they represent, to me they are shining examples of what we know as positive deviance. And that's a concept that you future generations people know a lot about. In fact, I would suggest to you that you're living examples of positive deviance. If there's a corner of the world that needs a large dose of positive deviance, it's the corner I'm living in at the moment, the countries affected by the Syrian crisis. Positive deviance, where citizens and communities work across divisions to achieve community solidarity, to have a positive impact on peace, where people in the state, communities, and the government can work together for stability and peace. Jordan and Lebanon have between them about 1 million Syrian refugees. That's a remarkable number of refugees to come into small countries with themselves populations of hardly 3 and 4 million. What is even more remarkable is that 100% of Syrian refugees in Lebanon and 80% of Syrian refugees in Jordan were not put into refugee camps, but they were welcomed into communities and homes across the two countries. I don't think I've heard of an example of displacement so remarkable. But the Syria war goes on, and now Lebanon and Jordan and the societies and communities within them are feeling the strain. Health services are overwhelmed. And by next year, it's estimated that in Lebanese schools, they will have more Syrian children studying than Lebanese children. Just think if that were to happen in our own communities. This is a huge change. Community services, water supply systems, sanitation services are becoming stretched to the limit. And Syrian refugees are willing to work for low wages, and they're displacing Jordanians and Lebanese, especially in competition for lower paid jobs. So the welcome mat is being withdrawn, and the community hostilities towards refugees are gradually growing. And the two host countries are calling for international support for their own community needs not just for Syrian refugees. And I think amid this growing tension, we need to know what communities are able to deal positively with these stresses and are still able to function and promote harmony. So I think this is where Future Generations comes in and where you need to come in. We need you to come and work with local communities and local leaders to identify those communities that demonstrate positive deviance under stress. How are they still functioning? How are there lesser divisions between Syrians and Lebanese and Jordanians? We need to find the positive examples that can be seen and shared with other communities who are struggling. So I've seen Future Generations, as some of you now know, do this work in Haiti, do this assessment of positive deviance in Haiti. And I'm hoping that we can have the same kind of partnership in the Middle East and in Lebanon and Jordan to start with. And who knows, one day, I hope, in Syria itself. So I've been talking to Everett, your Future Generations president, and I've talked to some influential Lebanese about Future Generations. And so I hope that shortly Future Generations will visit Lebanon to explore a positive deviance initiative starting in that country. Your experience as master's students who have studied and worked in your own communities is another Future Generations innovation that I hope we can introduce for young Syrians whose learning has been interrupted as they've been driven from their country into refugee camps and communities outside their own country. Never doubt for a minute the influence that you can have as leaders in your communities, in societies. I hope you're convinced of that. The fact that you're leaders is why you're here today and why you are graduating. Leadership is not a quality that you have to have just because you are super rich or because you're powerful politically or because you have reached a certain advanced age like me. You can lead, and you are leading now and from wherever you are in whatever you're doing. And it's a message that I hope you really believe and you will take to others in your communities. People can lead, people can make positive change and take it to scale from wherever they are. I started off talking about people who don't appear in the media spotlight, but who are tremendously influential agents for change in their own countries. So let me end with one person who you've probably heard of, and that's Malala Yousafzai. She's the young woman who was shot in the head by the Taliban in 2011 because she dared to demand an education, not just for herself, but for all girls. And she comes from Swat in the mountains of Pakistan. And in 2009, at the age of 11, she started a blog calling for education for girls, and she continued to speak out in her homeland in Swat, even as it was being taken over by the Taliban. She said, one child, one girl child, one teacher, one book can change the world. She was shot in the head, but she survived. And she's still only 16 today, but she's a game changer. She's a positive deviant, like you guys. She took the seed of education for girls, and she's taking it to scale. So for me, Malala represents all of you. The spirit that unites you as graduates of the Future Generations Masters Program. The spirit that drives you to return to your countries and communities as agents of empowerment, of change, of solidarity, and of peace. And I hope that I might see at least some of you in the Middle East. We need your stories, we need your positivity, we need your experience and your skills. But let me leave the last word to Malala. What she said after the Taliban attack that almost took her life. She said, "Nothing has changed in my life except for this. Weakness, fear, and hopelessness have died. Strength, power, and courage were born." So warmest congratulations again, Future Generations graduates. Now you're going to be part of a growing alumni network. I wish you well and Godspeed. Travel with strength, with power, and courage wherever you go. Thank you.